What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, your home for the 2020 World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. I wasn't sure if we were going to be here tonight. The Giants lose, the Dodgers win. I'm joined by Justin Lorber, a.k.a. Future Dodgers, if you follow him on Twitter. And we're here to break it all down. We're going to break down the Dodgers' 8-3 win over the Milwaukee Brewers tonight. We're going to break down the decisions that Dave Roberts made as far as Julio Urias and how far he went into this game as he gets win number 20. We're going to talk tomorrow and Walker Buehler and how we would address that with the potential for a game 163 on the horizon. So lots to talk about. But Justin, I'll just start with a simple big picture question. The Dodgers win 8-3. We're 99.4% of the way through the season, and the division is still within reach. Did you believe this was going to happen? Did you think that we would enter the last day a week ago? Did you think today we would wake up saying one game away?
A week ago, maybe. A couple days ago, no. So it is pleasant that we get an exciting last day of baseball.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, like, we kept thinking we need to get a game here, we need to get a game here, we need to get a game here. Of course, the Dodgers get a game on the very last day to keep themselves within reach. The Giants lose, as we said, 3-2 to the Padres. But let's break this one down first, and then again, we'll get to all the scenarios. This one was an interesting one because Julio Urias on the mound for the Dodgers, Corbin Burnes, one of the favorites for the NL Cy Young, on the mound for the Brewers, and things didn't start off well for Urias. He gets put runner on second and third with just one out in the first. He gets out of it allowing one run, but even at that point, you're thinking Corbin Burnes is on the other side. This is going to be difficult to scratch some runs across. Well, with two outs, Max Muncy reaches, Trey Turner reaches, and then Justin Turner smashes the ball into left center field. The Dodgers take a 3-1 lead. They extend that to 6-1 in the bottom of the fourth on an A.J. Pollock home run. They extend it to 7-1 on a Corey Seager home run in the fifth, and then Muncy adds on to the eighth to make it 8-1. They give a couple back. David Price struggles a little bit in the ninth inning. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about David Price. But 8-3 is the final. And there's two headlines here, and I'll start with the offense. The Dodger offense has been absolutely on fire, putting runs up. And even as I was thinking about the guys that are on fire, Trey Turner's continued to be hot. Corey Seager's continued to be hot. But Justin Turner, A.J. Pollock, where are you at with the Dodger offense? I mean, is it safe to say this is the best they've looked at any point this season?
Yeah, I think so. The whole year it's kind of been, well, this guy's hot, this guy's cold. It seems like they're really maximizing the amount of guys in the middle of the order who are getting hot all at the same time. And really couldn't be a more opportune time to do it.
Yeah. Looking at the box score, Seager 2 for 4, Trey 2 for 4, Muncy 2 for 3 with a walk, Justin Turner 2 for 4, and then AJ Pollock 1 for 3. So 9 hits, but all 9 come from just 5 players. And again, it's not perfect. Mookie Betts 0 for 4. He's had some struggles of late. Will Smith 0 for 3. He's had some struggles of late. And then Cody Bellinger 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts. As much as we want to get excited about everybody getting hot, we can't get greedy, okay? Cody Bellinger is still hitting like the 2021 version of Cody Bellinger. But when you think about, this is an interesting question, Justin. I'd love to get your thoughts, and folks that are joining us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. Going into a one-game series, would you prefer the offense to be on fire? Which do you see as more important? Where the offense is at going into that, or where the pitching is at going into a one-game wild card, or game 163, whichever the Dodgers might face this week?
I think obviously you need both. I think probably based on how inconsistent the offense has been this year, I think it's more encouraging for the offense to get rolling with everything going on this week. Because, even if Max Scherzer, who hasn't done well in his last couple of starts, he's still Max Scherzer.
Yeah.
Walker Buehler had a couple rough starts this month. Still Walker Buehler. So even if those guys haven't been on their best game, this month, the last couple of starts, I think it's better that the offense has gotten hot.
Yeah. Looking at the comments right now, folks seem to agree. Tom and Derek on Facebook both saying offense as well. And it's like, I think part of it is knowing that Max Scherzer is on the mound. You say, hey, I don't really care what Max Scherzer's last 2 starts looked like because he's Max Scherzer. And on the flip side is offensively, I mean, they faced Corbin Burnes today. Corbin Burnes is a better pitcher than even Adam Wainwright is, as good as Adam Wainwright has been. So if your offense can scratch this out. Now, it was unique circumstances. Burnes lasts just 2 innings and then's pulled. Colin Ray comes in and gives you 6 innings, which tells you everything you need to know about how seriously the Brewers were taking this game, especially once they got to Burnes. But for the Dodgers to be able to get to Corbin Burnes and then to scrap together 8 total runs was significant. The other big storyline on tonight's game was Julio Urias, and I know, again, we'll talk. You have some thoughts on the Dodgers' usage of Urias, but before we get to that, let's just talk about what we saw. 6 1/3, just 1 hit, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts, 1 run. That 1 run and that 1 hit both took place in the first inning, so he goes about 6 consecutive innings after that, right? That all happened before, with 1 out in the first. So from that point forward, he gets 18 outs with just 1 base runner allowed. That's a walk. He strikes out 7. This coming off an outing where he was pretty good in his previous outing. 5 innings pitched, 5 hits, no earned runs against the Arizona Diamondbacks. That was after a 2-stretch start where he hadn't been great. 11 innings pitched, 6 earned runs. One other thing of note before I ask your opinion, there's been a lot of talk about his fastball velocity. Velocity was up today. He was about a half a mile an hour faster with his fastball than he is on average this season. Now, of course, that average has been weighed down by what he's looked like over the last month and a half, but what did you see from Urias, and how do you feel about how he is? Like, do you see the effects of the long season, or do you feel like this is a guy you're confident in moving forward?
I think if you had told me he's pitching 180 innings this year, I would have expected a lot worse, or maybe not a lot worse, but worse than he's been in the last month or so.
Yeah.
His last couple of starts, he's been great. And like you said, the fastball velocity up today, even above his season average, not just the last month. Maybe some of that was the adrenaline last start of the year going for a milestone win. So it's good to see, and he has developed into a upper tier starter in the league, not just on the Dodgers. And with Kershaw being out, it makes it all the more important.
Yeah, I'll ask you as a prospect guy. I mean, I think people that maybe don't follow this super closely may have easily forgotten that 5-6 years ago, this guy was one of the top prospects in all of baseball as a very, very young player. I think it was Jay Jaffe, I could be wrong, was tweeting out about how amazing it is that Urias has kind of, through everything he's been through, has kind of realized the potential that people saw as a prospect. So I'd love to hear from your perspective how he has developed from being one of the best pitching prospects, one of the best prospects in all of baseball. I mean, as like a teenager 6 or 7 years ago, to a guy who's going to finish in the top 5 or 6 in the Cy Young Award voting this year.
So I can't opine too much on that because I was not really scouting prospects, doing
Fair.
that kind of thing when he was still a prospect. I was obviously a fan, and I knew who he was. Obviously, pitchers, when guys debut young, they're usually hitters. There aren't a lot of pitchers who debut as teenagers, Urias being one of them. And I think the bigger thing is not just his development from being a prospect, but being able to come back from the shoulder surgery. That is a difficult surgery to come back from.
Yeah.
Come back and not just be as good as he's been, but to hold up over a full season, really no arm issues. It's been awesome. I'm really happy for him.
Yeah, I was looking. Obviously, he gets to 20 wins, a big milestone. I believe I heard that had not been reached since 2016. Friend of the show, Max Scherzer, was the last Major League Baseball pitcher to get 20 wins. Urias needed to win 5 of his last 6 starts, record a win in 5 of his last 6 starts to get there. He does. He finishes the season with a 2.96 ERA. So he also gets the ERA down below 3. So really impressive stuff. I know you and I both agree on this. Wins, like, kind of a who cares. I mean, you look at the run support Urias has gotten. It's something like half of the starts he made this year, the team scored 6 or more runs in. So wins have just as much, if not more, to do with the team around you than it does the pitcher. That said, 20 to me still feels like one of those numbers that means something. You know, it's like there's certain milestones that even as sabermetrics has maybe changed the way we think of 100 RBIs or a 300 batting average or whatever it might be, 20 wins still feels significant. Do you resonate with that at all, or do you not care a lick about the difference between 19 wins and 20?
Probably not a popular opinion, but no. I didn't even know he was going for 20 wins today until it was tweeted at me approximately 10 times after I said they should pull him after 4.
Yeah,
So,
well, go there, because that's what another thing I wanted to ask you about was the Urias and how he was used. He pitches through the 5th, through the 6th, comes back out for the 7th. So say anything you want about Urias, but get to your point about how you would have preferred to see him used tonight.
So, and I think this goes with a couple of caveats. First caveat is I am an online commenter and I do not actually manage the team. I don't interact with the players on a day-to-day basis. And someone brought up that Julio had actually mentioned that reaching 20 wins was an important milestone for him personally. And I'll never have that conversation with him. Dave Roberts has those conversations with him, knows how important it is, knows how important it is to build trust and to build, that kind of unity with his players to be able to reach them. That's not me. So when I'm talking about it, that is not a realm I go into because it's not a realm that I am ever going to be involved in my life. The second thing is I probably pulled him after 4 innings after the Dodgers went up 6-1 and their win probability went up to like 95%. Because here's what you're looking at right now. You start Buehler tomorrow, and somehow the Giants are starting Logan Webb, who's been their best starter this year, and the Padres are starting some guy named Rice Kinnear because Yu Darvish got put on the IL. Who knows what happens there? But if the Padres manage to pull out a win and the Dodgers are able to win with Buehler tomorrow, and I think we know this game matters a lot more to the Dodgers than it does to the Brewers tomorrow, and I think they'll act accordingly, then you're looking at a game 163 where Max Scherzer starts. And you'd have the advantage there, I think, even though it's in San Francisco, Max Scherzer versus Alex Wood, who would be the Giants starter on Monday. But if you happen to lose that game, you go into a wild card game against the Cardinals, Adam Wainwright, who's been great this year, and you're faced with the possibility of a bullpen game or starting Tony Gonsolin, I think you'd probably rather have Julio on short rest than either of those two options. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't know what they would do. And I'm not even sure, I think with how much Julio's pitched this year, maybe pitching him on short rest wouldn't be a good option. But I think having the option available as you get closer to that day, and if that possibility happens to come up, would be beneficial, especially in a game that you're very likely to win. You're already up 6-1 after 4 innings at home. So I would have pulled him. And I understand that there are a lot of people who value the sentimentality of going for the win, going for the 20th win. I get it. I just personally don't care about it. And I think that even though the possibility is remote, you need a lot of things to happen. You need the Dodgers to win tomorrow. You need the Giants to lose tomorrow. And you need the Dodgers to lose a game 163 against the Giants for that to even be a factor.
Yeah.
But it is possible. And I think you have to prepare for that kind of scenario. So now you're looking at a wild card game if they happen to get there through a game 163 where I don't really know who you start.
Yeah. Yeah, well, first, let me say, as an Oregon Ducks fan, I think win probability needs to be set on fire and sent out to pasture and never talked about, because I saw way too many 99.9% things today about the Ducks over Stanford, and we don't need to get into that, okay? But secondly, I appreciate this opinion because I do resonate with it. If not for the 20 wins, the thing, I would be with you. And even with the 20 wins thing, great. He pitched the 5. Now get him the heck out of this game. At that point, I believe it was maybe 6-1. So the game was comfortable. It's not, I'm not going to sit here and say the Dodgers have overcome 2 4-run deficits of late. The Dodgers obviously more highly motivated than the Brewers were going to be in this one. The Brewers basically threw a guy out there after Burns and said, hey, congrats. Whatever happens from here on out, you're the guy. So we knew where they were going to be, and you probably could have assumed. So for me, okay, you wanted him out after 4. I wanted him out after 5. There's not a big difference. It was hilarious to me they left him in for the 6th. Even more hilarious to me, I was texting you. I almost texted you in the 6th, Dave's going to bring him out in the 7th just to mess with you, Justin. And sure enough, he comes out in the 7th. I'm convinced it was just so he can get an ovation, which, cool, good for Julio. I'm sure that felt great. Maybe that's a confidence booster. Maybe there's some psychological benefit that Dave feels. But I do want to ask you one question about Urias, because some people in the comments are asking this. You're recommending the possibility of limiting his pitch count tonight and then bringing him back on short rest on Wednesday, potentially for a wild card game. Even with all of this stuff about there's more innings than he's ever pitched and his velocity was declining and blah, blah, blah. Even with all of that, you would still prefer taking your chances with whatever you're going to get from Urias. Obviously it's Saturday, so he would get Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday off and be back Wednesday. So he'd be on 1 day shorter rest than normal. You would still take that chance over a guy like Tony Gonsolin. That's a question being asked, and I think it's a fair one.
It is a fair question. And I think probably the optimal thing there would not be like a full 6 or 7 inning, or maybe not even 5 innings from Julio in a wild card
Yeah.
game. But he gives you 3, and then you hand it off to the bullpen. And let's say you have 1 inning each for Garcia, Bickford, Kelly, Knable, Trinan, Jansen. That gets you to 9. And, things happen, things change. You might need to move things around if one guy doesn't have it. But I think that's a more preferable option than a normal Tony Gonsolin start or just a straight up bullpen game. Uh, but yeah, it's a fair question because you don't know exactly what he would give you on short rest. But just the option to even have him available to give you a couple innings, I think would be valuable in that game if you get to a point where you can't start Scherzer and you can't start Buehler.
Yeah. Just while we're on this subject, I mean, where are you at on Tony Gonsolin now? Because this is a guy who's going to be the number 4 starter for the Dodgers entering the postseason. Now, the number 4 starter is a position that is used, but how much it's used is, totally depends on situational stuff. Obviously, if you have to play a 162 and then a wild card and then go into a 5-game NLDS series, let's say it gets to that, then the odds of you needing a 4th pitcher are very high. Gonsolin's a guy that, you could paint it 2 ways, right? On one hand, you say, hey, this is a guy who has a 3.23 ERA on the season. You could also say he's a guy who has a 1.35 whip on the season. One of those is very good, and one of those is very bad. He's coming off an outing the other night against the Padres, 4 2/3, 4 hits, 2 walks, 3 earned, 5 strikeouts. Before that, 5 innings, 3 hits, no walks, 7 strikeouts, 2 earned runs. So has been okay. Has not, sort of up and down since coming back. He's made 5 starts in the month of September with an ERA of 4. So I guess and to be fair, in 5 starts, he's averaged 4 innings on each of those starts total. Now, I think he could have gone deeper against the Padres. He looked pretty pissed off to be taken out of that game. But where are you at on Gonsolin? I mean, I think we've had conversations where big picture, not just 2021, but we like Gonsolin. I think I'm higher on him than most. I think you like Gonsolin. I also know that he's only made 5 starts since being out for 2 months. So for a month and a half, I should say. So where are you at on Gonsolin? Because it seems like if you would take a tired Julio Urias on 1 day shorter rest over Gonsolin, then maybe that speaks more to where you're at on Gonsolin than it does on Urias.
Yeah, I would say so. And like you, I like Tony Gonsolin a lot. I think he's been an above average major league starter in his first couple of years in the majors. But I think when you're talking about a 1-game playoff, that's it, win or go home, the inconsistency he's had over the last month, I don't know if you want to deal with that variance. Yeah. And like you said, if he starts, you're probably getting a short start for him no matter what. Not just because that's basically what he's done the last month, but also because in a 1-game playoff, you're not letting him go deep. If he gets into trouble, you're going to pull him anyways. Yeah. So with that in mind, and if they had pulled Julio after 4 or after 5, I think you can ask him to go maybe 2 or 3 and then hand it over to the bullpen. I have no problem starting Tony Gonsolin in a game 4 of the NLDS, NLCS World Series, whatever it is. I think he's locked in as the number 4 starter, and I don't think there's any question about it. But 1-game winner take all, I don't know if he would be the guy just because of the variance over the last month or so, his starts.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a fair point. And when we talk about, and we'll get to this in just a second, a bullpen game versus a Tony Gonsolin start, I'm not sure there's a massive difference between those two. I mean, typically in bullpen games, you have one guy who you're trying to get at least 2 innings out of. I think that would be Gonsolin. I was joking with Daniel last night. Every time they show the replay of Arozarena hitting a home run off of Gonsolin in the World Series last year, I joke because I'm like, I just think Gonsolin got robbed a little bit. That seemed like a good pitch that Arozarena, like full extension, pokes it, and it does. I can't believe that ball gets out. So as a Gonsolin defender, I'm like, I just think he gets a bad rap on some of these things. But I do think that between those two, whether it's a bullpen game or a Gonsolin start, which would be the most likely scenarios, and we'll get into that in just a moment, I'm not sure there's a huge difference. So let's shift gears really quick and look ahead to tomorrow. We've got some folks in the comments talking about Giants versus Padres. And obviously, as much as we want to talk about the Dodgers, it's a fascinating scenario because, as you said, there's a guy that I've never heard of making a start for the Padres tomorrow against the Giants' best pitcher. The Giants have everything to play for. The Padres have nothing to play for. Now you could say the same was true today, and the Giants lost and the Padres won. The Giants had just 5 base runners all day. That was against a normal major league starter, though. Who knows? Maybe we get the benefit of like, oh, nobody's got a scouting report on this guy. The Giants can't hit him, But assuming that you believe that you have a chance tomorrow. Walker Buehler is going to start for the Dodgers. There was a question before the game. Dave Roberts basically said he's going to start tomorrow no matter what. Even if the Dodgers had lost or the Giants had won, Buehler was going to start, but it would have just been a matter of how long, maybe 2 or 3 innings like you said. Now I'm imagining Walker's got to be your long distance guy, right? Like it's a full send, like Game 7 Walker Buehler type atmosphere tomorrow, right?
Yeah, and I think it could be interesting what the Brewers decide to do, because they're throwing Freddie Peralta, who's their number 3 starter. You know, if you look at the NLDS schedule, you've got Game 1 next Friday, Game 2 next Saturday, Game 3 the following Monday. So he's not going to pitch until the following Monday.
Yeah.
So who knows how long he'll go? Who knows whether the Brewers want to get work for some of their high leverage relievers. They don't have Devin Williams, obviously, who is most likely out for the year, but they still have Josh Hader. Maybe they'll just throw him in like the 6th or 7th inning and get him an inning of work. So I do think it's variable. If you're going to start him, you're not going to have him for game 163. You're not going to have him for the wild card game, most likely, unless something really weird would happen. So I think you kind of just ride him as long as he's pitching well. Let him go as far as he can.
Yeah. If any Brewers managers are watching this game or front office executives, when you face the Dodgers in the NLCS, I think you would be better off if Hader doesn't pitch tomorrow. I think you'd be better off if Peralta doesn't pitch tomorrow. I think just maybe this Colin Ray fellow, just throw him back out there, let him throw 9 innings. You just don't want the Dodgers to get looks at your guys. I'm just a suggestion, free advice from me to you. I'd love if you did that. All joking aside, you actually shared with me this morning that you have a different approach for how you would deal with tomorrow's game if you were the Dodgers. I give you the floor. I give you some space, knowing what we know now, because it was sort of a hypothetical when we first talked about this. Maybe it was yesterday. But you would not pitch Walker Buehler tomorrow. If Justin Lorber was in charge, you would not pitch Walker Buehler. Am I right on that?
You were right in that I said it earlier, and I thought about it more, kind of reconsidered.
Okay, fair. You don't have to defend it anymore then if you don't want to.
And I think it's something that should be considered. And what I brought up was throwing a bullpen game tomorrow. And the Dodgers did basically what they would have needed to do in order to get there, and that the majority of their high leverage guys and key impact guys did not pitch today. They did pitch Mitch White, who was a guy you could have gotten maybe 2 innings out of. So I don't think after tonight's game, where you use Mitch White, you use Phil Bickford, maybe it's not the best idea. And you had Corey Knebel warming at the end. I don't know how hot he got, but he was warming at the end in case Price got into further trouble. So after reconsidering, I do think Buehler's probably the right option, just because, it is a remote chance that you do end up in the wild card game after losing a game 3.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think it's something that you would at least consider. Do we want to do this?
Yeah, because the idea, right, is essentially, if you map it out, there's a potential that you're going to play Sunday, you're going to play Monday, and you're going to play Wednesday. And if that scenario comes true, one of those 3 games is going to have to be a bullpen game. And so if you were to know that you were going to play all 3 of those, which is obviously an impossible situation, then which of the 3 would you most like to be throwing a bullpen game in? And the answer would probably be Sunday. Now, obviously, that's in part because in this scenario that you have forced the game 163. So, but that's the idea, is you don't want to get to Wednesday and be like, well, crap, we got Gonsolin and none of our other starters, and we've got whatever bullpen pieces are left. Now, everyone would be rested because everyone would have the day off Tuesday, plus hopefully Scherzer on Monday gives you some length. So you don't have to worry about a tired bullpen on Wednesday, but I do think it's a fair thing to think. But again, I think the exercise that you work through is, you can't assume that you're going to get there. You kind of have to just play the hand that's dealt in front of you, which is you need to win tomorrow for any of this to matter. And then you take your chances and say, hey, we feel good about potentially winning the division on Monday with Max Scherzer versus Alex Wood, as you pointed out. I mean, that you might have said the Dodgers have a small advantage. If you did, I can't remember if you used that language, it would be a massive advantage, Scherzer versus Alex Wood. Although Alex Wood seems to pitch well against the Dodgers in some certain points, but it's a fascinating thing. Again, not that it's matters, because Walker Buehler is definitely going to start, and they're definitely going to hope to get 6 or 7 innings out of him. And they're hoping that, game 7 of the NLCS, Walker Buehler, like the guy who's your big game pitcher, you hope that that's the guy that shows up tomorrow and not the Walker Buehler who, prior to his last start has been rough, shows up. But Yeah, it'll be tomorrow will be a fascinating day. Obviously, in the American League, I think we still have the potential for a 4-way tie for 2 spots. I still don't understand how that would work out, but I'm excited to hear about it. As you look tomorrow, I
Actually,
mean,
I think
okay, did the Mariners? They were the last ones
the
playing.
Mariners might have lost. They were down.
Oh no. Okay.
They
Well,
were
hopefully,
down 4-3. They blew a lead.
man, my
Um,
my Pacific Northwest brethren, my Mariners fan friends who have just it's been teased. They just got their hopes up here for just like maybe the playoffs maybe, and then no dice. So I don't know.
let's see.
Yeah, look that one up.
And actually, I do like the framing you used on the issue, actually, even more than I did, talking about how if you know you're going to have a bullpen game, you probably would prefer it to be tomorrow against the Brewers. Oh, the Mariners have the lead, 5-4.
There we go, baby. Seattle, Pacific Northwest.
But you'd probably like it to be tomorrow against the Brewers, who don't have a whole lot to play for. Maybe might rest some of their guys. But, you don't know that you're going to play all 3. Yeah. So you might as well push it off until you have to.
Yeah. And it is fascinating, right, to see the way that it shakes out, because you look at all of the teams involved. The Cardinals are stuck in the wild card game, and they will be the best prepared team should it get to a wild card game under some of these scenarios. Whereas the Giants, if the Giants have to play game 163, like they have to put Alex Wood on the mound. Like they feel the worst about game 163. Whereas if the Dodgers play 163 and then the wild card game, the Dodgers would probably feel worse about the wild card. If the Giants had to play 163 and then the wild card, I don't know how their rotation shakes out, but I would imagine they have a better option. I don't know if Gossman's available or Descalfani or whoever, but they probably have one of those 2 guys available for Wednesday to be able to make that start.
Yeah, it's Descalfani. Gossman pitched tonight, so similar to Julio. If it had been a short start, maybe you throw him on short rest, but I think he went 6 innings or something like that tonight, so he wouldn't be in contention.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a couple more questions. Some folks mentioning this in the chat. And if you've got questions for me, questions for Justin, feel free to throw those in the chat now. I got a bunch of questions about a couple of guys who we did see tonight. One of them is Bickford. We saw Phil Bickford, and Joe Davis pointed it out. He had a career high in velocity tonight, which is fascinating for a guy that, much like Julio, I would say the last couple weeks of his season have not been the best couple weeks of his season. And you start to think, well, who knows? Like, obviously, the pressure might be getting to him or the innings might be getting to him. He comes out tonight against his former team, and he's pumping 97. I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about some of the different relief pitchers. Where are you at on Phil Bickford, both now looking into the postseason? Where does he stand in the pecking order? Like, is that a guy that you trust in the 8th inning of a close game if everybody had gotten used the night before? Or is he if he's the worst guy in your bullpen, then you feel okay?
I think both, and I don't think he's the worst guy in the bullpen.
No, definitely not. We'll get to the worst guys in the bullpen here in a moment.
No, he's been a great find. And I can't remember going into a postseason feeling this comfortable with as many guys as I do in the bullpen. I mentioned the 6 guys earlier that you could throw at a wild card game: Vesia, Bickford, Knebel, Trinan, Kelly, and Jansen. I don't remember a year where heading to the postseason, the Dodgers had 6 guys in the bullpen that I would feel comfortable out there in a 1-run game with the lead in the postseason. But honestly, I would for all 6 of those.
Yeah. No, and that leads me to the second guy, which is David Price, who pitched tonight, who is a name that at the beginning of the season, I was defending it saying, hey, I think this guy, based on the last time we saw him pitch, is better than most people give him credit for. Again, another like Tony Gonsolin type. You look at the ERA, it's not that terrible, but you watch him pitch tonight, and I tweeted out, like, is David Price going to make the wild card or the postseason roster? And it was kind of like a lot of people like, no, like he's definitely not. He shouldn't make the postseason roster. But then you do the math, and there are, as you pointed out, I would say 6 guys in the bullpen that I feel great about, and I'll probably forget one now, but it's Jansen, Trinan, Knebel, Kelly, Vesia, and Bickford are probably the 6 that you trust and feel good about. And then going back to 2019 in the NLDS, the Dodgers took 12 pitchers. I went to 2019 because there's no DH. So you got 4 starters. That leaves you with 2 more bullpen spots for Evan Phillips, who I know you like, Justin Brule, David Price, Brusdar Graterol. Someone mentioned Mitch White as a possibility. He was not on my initial list, but someone I trust mentioned his name. I think being serious. So of those 5, you've got Brule and Price if you want lefties. You've got White and Price if you want a long guy out there. And then you've got Phillips, who's probably been the best sort of in general. And then you've got Graterol, who definitely has the high velocity sort of like been in the moment before kind of thing. So how would you shake out, where does Price stand in those 5 guys? And if there's somebody I'm missing here, throw them out there.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are a lot of different factors I think you have to consider in a wild card game
Oh,
roster.
yeah.
I don't know if you really need a long guy.
No, yeah, you probably wouldn't
So
even put
maybe
starters on the roster. Like a bunch of these starters probably wouldn't even be on the roster.
I do think there are. I I don't know exactly what they are, but I don't think you can just change the roster entirely. There might be some kind of
Okay.
limit for what you do with the wild card roster in relation to what your roster for the division series is if you win that
Got it.
game. So you might have to put some starters on the roster, but yeah, you wouldn't necessarily need a long guy in that game, but maybe in a longer series, even in the division series, you might want a long guy. So maybe that would be Mitch White.
I mean, do you trust
David Price
White or Price? Like if you had to pick, like NLDS, Dave Roberts is like, we need one long guy, Justin. Who do you want? Do you want Mitch White or David Price? Who would you take?
Personally, I like Mitch
Okay.
White, but I think, David Price, you talk about the intangibles, the veteran leadership. As I kind of said, like 20 minutes ago, not stuff I have a whole lot of insight in, so I'm not really going to opine on it. But that's something, Dave consider in the sense that David Price has pitched in the World Series. He's pitched in postseasons before. He has been on the mound for the last out of a league championship series in his rookie year. So that might be something that is considered that we don't have any insight into. Another guy who I want to bring up, and if you said him, I apologize because I don't think I heard him, but Garrett Clevenger.
Oh, yeah. Go
Not
Ducks,
sure if you said
baby.
him. So he has been on the 60-day IL, but he can return. I believe he can return for the start of the division series. I'm not sure if he's eligible for the wild card game, but he can't pitch regular season. But he's been down in OKC on a rehab assignment for the last week or two, doing pretty well. And if you need a second lefty, you're looking at Brule, you're looking at Price, maybe Garrett Clevenger. He wouldn't have had, major league innings in 2 months.
Yeah.
But he has the right stuff. And, in terms of a guy who you could bring in early in the game, if you need a second lefty and you don't want to use Vesia yet, not a terrible option.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating one. Again, go Ducks. So shout out to University of Oregon right there. Can't hate that one. I mean, so for you, Phillips, right? Phillips is the 7th guy in the bullpen for you, right? Of all the guys I just mentioned, you have him over any of these long guys and Gratterall, right?
I think so, and I think he's been effective in like 2 inning stints.
Yeah,
and that's something that might bump him up, especially if you don't end up using a long guy.
Yeah,
I think that would benefit Phillips more than anyone because they've thrown him out there for 2 or 3 innings at a time, and you might need that at some point in the playoffs, especially if you don't have White or Price in the pen.
And if you were going not long guy, but you wanted a second lefty, Brule, Price, or Clevenger, who would you take? Again, you're not valuing the length of Price. You're just looking for like every once in a while there's 2 outs and there's a lefty up and you want to put a lefty into the game. Obviously, we know the rules. You have to face 3 batters unless you can finish the inning. So it's not just a lefty specialist. But, I mean, Brule has been decent, but he's not a guy that you necessarily like would bet your life on continuing to be consistent in the biggest moments. Price is the opposite. He has not been good, and yet you almost trust him more in big moments. And then you've got Clevenger, a guy who hasn't pitched in the major leagues in 2.5 months.
Yeah, Clevenger, I think, has the highest ceiling of the 3 in terms of what he could give you. He could come in and strike out the side in a postseason game, which I wouldn't bet on either of the other 2 doing. In terms of effectiveness, probably Brule. And then in terms of postseason experience, Price. So it'll be interesting to see how that end of the bullpen forms and what factors they might look at. I'm certainly interested to see. I think in prior years, we've kind of had, at least with the bullpen pieces, figured out with how many guys have been hurt and how many different guys have gotten a shot at the major leagues this year. There's some fluidity there, and I think it'll be very intriguing to see how they ultimately end up deciding to construct the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's get to a couple questions here. Pocket quarterback Lamar Jackson on YouTube would like to know. He's asking about Scherzer winning the Cy Young. Obviously, the Dodgers will have 3 guys in Cy Young contention: Urias, Buehler, and Scherzer. I would say that Buehler and Scherzer have a realistic chance. Urias, and when I say realistic, they have a outside chance. I would say Urias has no chance of actually winning the award, but he will finish highly. How do you have those three guys in your mind? For me, I would go Scherzer's number one. I just think the consistency, to me, like a statistic like walks and hits per inning pitched, I know is like just a very random statistic. He leads the league in that category. To me, that seems like a very basic, like he has allowed the least guys to get on base. That seems like a very good skill. Obviously, I believe his ERA is slightly better than Walker Buehler's, or at least it's very close. So for me, Scherzer would probably be one. I think Buehler's month of September hurt him. Obviously, Scherzer was ascending and Buehler was descending. So I would have Scherzer one, I would have Buehler two, and I would have Urias three. As far as the Dodgers go, I don't think any of them finish higher than third, if I'm being honest, though.
For the Dodgers, yeah, I would agree with that order. The award voters have typically trended away from they've been more traditional, they've been more narrative focused, and Scherzer, a ton of innings, a ton of strikeouts. He gets traded midseason to a powerhouse team and absolutely dominates, creates a really strong narrative that some voters might like and buy into more than someone like Corbin Burns, who was incredible at the start of the year, still very good throughout the year, but had his best work in April and May. And then also, I believe Joe Davis brought this up on the broadcast. No starting pitcher has ever won the Cy Young with less than 180 innings. Burns at 167. So, this year different because COVID guys would be, whether it's the vaccine or they got exposed or they actually got COVID, they would be out for a week or two at a time. In addition to just normal injuries and wear and tear coming back from a 60-game season, most guys didn't pitch the kind of innings that they normally would. But I wonder how the voters will handle that with Burns having less innings than some of his competitors.
Yeah, and for those unfamiliar, Zach Wheeler is the other name who probably is in the conversation, and then Adam Wainwright, I would imagine, maybe sort of in the Julio Urias category. And I mean, I think it was Jason Stark on The Athletic. He has Wheeler as his MVP of the National League, so not just the Cy Young. He actually has Wheeler as the MVP. So I think it will be fascinating because I think it's Wheeler leads the league in strikeouts, Burns leads the league in like ERA, strikeout rate, and walk rate. And then Scherzer is like sort of right in the middle with a lot of those categories, but then has the best walks and hits per inning pitched out of all of them. I mean, Burns is like FIP, is absurd. It's like an obscene number. Now, who knows? I joked that the Dodgers needed to rough him up today to kind of boost up the ERA and help their guys' Cy Young chances. I mean, they did all right. 3 runs in 2 innings doesn't hurt, but we'll see how that one plays out. Another question that was asked in here, and apologies because I lost sight of who asked this question. If we do end up in a wild card game, do you treat that like it's Game 7 of the World Series where it's all hands are on deck and you're just full, or like how much do you try and balance even if we win this game, that 2 days later we've got to go start a 5-game series? It's a fascinating development. I mean, I guess it's equivalent to Game 5 of the NLDS where you want to go all out to win the game to keep your season alive. But how would you navigate that?
I think all hands on deck except for your games 1 and 2 starters in the NLDS, which would be Buehler and Urias. And some might even say, no, doesn't matter, throw everyone. And I kind of have a hard time disagreeing with that because if you don't win that game, division series doesn't matter. And everything changes once you get into that game. You can get into that game with a plan, and then you might have to throw it out the window.
Yeah.
So
Dave Roberts is good at
obviously, I'll feel a lot more confident about whatever plan they have if that plan involves Max Scherzer taking the mound in the first inning.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens tomorrow. It should be interesting.
When I was thinking, I'm like, yeah, all hands on deck. On the flip side, I'm like, look, if Scherzer doesn't give you 6, and if, Treinen, Jansen, and some form of Kelly, Knebel, and Vesia don't give you the last 3, then like none of this probably matters. Like there's probably not a scenario where you've burned Scherzer, Knebel, Kelly, Vesia, Treinen, and Jansen, and you're like, oh shoot, we need another pitcher. Like if you've gotten to that point, you're probably screwed already, or you're in the 16th inning, one of the two. So I think that's what makes it nice is with a guy like Scherzer, it's not a short leash. It's kind of like, no, he's probably pitching 5 no matter what, and you're hoping for 7, and you would trust him in the 7th, even if he got into a little bit of trouble. And then you feel really good about Treinen and Jansen. And even honestly, if we're being realistic, like you could get 9 outs between Treinen and Jansen. Either of those guys are guys that they trust to get 4 or 5 outs. So I don't think it would necessarily need to be an all hands on deck scenario where like, oh shoot, Julio, we need 2 outs out of you on short rest. I don't think it's going to get there. But we'll see. We'll see. Let's see. Let's take a couple more questions. It's going to be a shorter show tonight. Justin's on East Coast time. He's blessing us with his time tonight, so we want to honor that a little bit. Laura asks this, and I honestly don't know the answer. You might. What happens if there is a 4-way tie in the American League? Have you read up on how they would navigate this?
Yeah. So each team gets assigned A, B, C, or D. From what I was reading earlier, right now, the Red Sox would be assigned A, and the Blue Jays would be assigned B. The Yankees would get C, and the Mariners would get D. And how it works is it's like kind of like in college football, or I think any football. You decide, do you want the ball first, or do you want to pick the side? This is, do you want to pick who you're playing, or do you want to pick home field advantage? So obviously, teams A and B would pick home field advantage. So the games would be at Fenway and in Rogers Center in Toronto. And then the Yankees would get to choose, do you want to travel to Fenway or do you want to travel to Toronto?
Wow.
Which would just be, that would just be unreal for the fact that the Yankees would have to decide which game to play in. I think that's right. If I'm wrong, my apologies. That's what I was reading earlier, and I feel like I remembered the correct version.
Okay, and people are in the chat are commenting that the Mariners did win 6-4, and so that is in play. And just to clarify, for those that are unfamiliar, it would be a 4-way tie for 2 wildcard spots. So they're not playing for 1 wildcard spot; it would be for 2. And so then it would just be 1 game. You would just have to beat 1 team to make the wild card, and then I guess then those 2 would play each other in the wild card game afterwards. So you would have 2 games on Monday, and then the American League wildcard game is on Tuesday. So the Yankees and Red Sox and the Blue Jays and Mariners would play Monday, and then I guess whichever team is higher in the A, B, C, D rankings would then host the second round as well. Do you know how the A, B, C, and D was determined? Is it like record against the American League or something like that?
I don't.
Okay. You're getting comments that you were spot.
That sounds like something they may use.
You're getting comments in the chat that you're spot on your explanation of this, by the way. So we're getting affirmation that you're right.
Great.
There you go. And then if the Dodgers would play 163, the Giants would host that game. And I believe. And that's because of a head-to-head record. Is that right?
Yeah, that's because of that Sunday Night Baseball game when Walker Buehler got shelled.
Freaking Walker Buehler.
It's tough because he's been so good against them his entire career.
Yeah.
And they were just shelling him that game. It was frustrating to watch.
Crazy. All right. Well, hey, let me get you out of here with this. Do we see a game 163? Yes or no between the Dodgers and Giants?
Statistically, probably not.
In your heart, Justin. In your heart, what do you believe is going to happen tomorrow?
I think the Dodgers will win. I think the Dodgers will take care of their business. It all depends on whether Rice Jr. can shut down the Giants for like 5 innings.
Look, if anybody knows anything about this guy, I would trust it to be you. Do you know anything about this guy?
I know his name. I know he has pitched like I was looking at this earlier. He's pitched like 26 innings and he's walked 18 and he struck out 18.
Oh gosh. 18 walks in 26 innings.
Yeah, and an equivalent number of strikeouts.
Okay, that's not great. That's not great. He's striking out well below a batter per inning and walking, basically a batter every 2 inning and a half. So that's not what we want to see. Oh, he's a reliever. Okay, a bunch of people are pointing out. So it's going to be a bullpen game for the Padres, but still doesn't matter. The name on the placard is his.
Yeah, I think he's gone like 2 or 3 innings a few times this year, and I think I was looking. He was a starter in the minor leagues, but yeah, you're probably not getting more than 4 from him tomorrow. So if he can shut him down for 3, that would be great. I think I would take that and hope that maybe the Padres scratch across a couple runs off of Logan Webb, which is going to be tough. How good he's been this year. Maybe there's some motivation because they're about to have their manager fired.
Yeah, hey, fight hard for Tingler, guys. Come on. We know none of you like him. Clearly, none of you respond well to his managerial style. Half of you, it sounds like probably hate the guy. But you know what? Just go win one for the old skipper tomorrow, okay? Yeah, that's the feat, right? I'm with you. Like, I feel really good about the Dodgers winning tomorrow. Walker Buehler's pitching. It's a big game, etc. It's just really hard to be like, you know what? Yeah, now, what's fascinating is the Padres. I think I read the Giants' last 4 losses are all against the Padres. Now, on one hand, that's because they've played a bunch of times. On the other hand, like, that's just a weird thing. Like, when the Dodgers made up all those games against the Giants, however many 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was like Padres were beating them. So, who knows? I mean, like, hopefully Machado and Tatis and Cronenworth and those guys are in the lineup. They all played today, so I don't see a reason why you would bench them tomorrow. Actually, I don't know if Tatis played today, but I know Machado and Cronenworth played today. So hopefully those guys continue to play. But that's the harder one. Like, we're going to get a Padres bullpen game after an extra innings game, and they're going to try and beat the best pitcher that the best team in baseball has. It seems unlikely there. A couple people are pointing out, just so you know, Justin, I made a deal on last night's show that if Austin Barnes were to get the game-winning hit in a wild card game to send the Dodgers into the real postseason, that I would have to buy an Austin Barnes jersey. I told them I would proudly display it. The buying part, I think we kind of settled softly on a jersey, because the joke with me is that I'm not convinced that if we played in the wild card game, that Dave Roberts would not be starting Austin Barnes at catcher. Like that, I see that in my future, and I hate it already. I'm not saying it's going to happen. There's a part of me that feels like it might, and so. I don't know. Should I be worried about Austin Barnes starting a wild card game and getting a game-winning hit?
I mean, I can't imagine a world where Will Smith is not in the lineup in a winner-take-all game. Even though, like you said, hasn't hit like a lot of guys have gotten hot. He hasn't been hot the last couple of weeks. Even then, I don't see how you can keep him out of the lineup. There's no DH this year, so you can't just put him in. And then if he is in the lineup, Austin Barnes is probably your last guy off the bench because he's the backup catcher.
Yeah. Bottom of the 14th. Austin Barnes comes up to the plate with Albert Pujols, your pinch runner at second base with the game on the line. I could see it now. I guess, yeah, and it would be bottom because the Dodgers would be hosting that game. So there you go. Who knows? Who knows? It's in my future. We'll see.
Walker Buehler would be a pinch runner, I think, before Pujols.
Fair. Just about Gonsolin, too. They got a bunch of guys that would run before Pujols. Absolutely. Hey, well, we appreciate you guys joining us. We had a huge crowd, folks joining us on Facebook, YouTube. Justin, thank you for joining us. Just as a reminder, our schedule. So me, Daniel, and Matt will be going live tomorrow night. So not a post-game show right after the game ends. We're going to jump on at 8 p.m., and we're going to break down whatever happened earlier in the day, tomorrow, and as well as what that means for Monday, potentially a game, or Wednesday, potentially a game. Justin and I, the plan is to do a show of the two of us breaking down the future on Monday. That is kind of dependent upon whether or not there's a baseball game on Monday that we have to watch and the Dodgers are playing the Giants or not. So stay tuned to that. The moral of the story is this. Make sure you subscribe here to our YouTube channel, Dodger Blue 1958. Ring the notification bell. We'd really appreciate that. Obviously, follow Justin at Future Dodgers on social media. Dodger Blue 1958 on social media as well. Check out DodgerBlue.com. We appreciate you all. We have one more game. 99.4% of the way through the season, the Dodgers are one game back of the Giants. They win tonight, 8-3. Julio Urias gets his 20th win. Tomorrow's a big one. Tomorrow, the Dodgers have a chance to keep alive their hope of extending the division championship crown, which I know Justin and I care more about than probably most people, but it is a big deal. So hopefully we can do that. So we appreciate you guys. As always, we'll send you out with the words of Vince Scully. We don't get to do this very many more times, talking about the 2020 World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. We'll do it once more. Have a good night, everybody.
The best team holding a trophy high in the air. The Los Angeles Dodgers, champions of the baseball world.